Today I'm going to show you how to make this necklace, earring, and bracelet set with the Autumn Tones treasure bag. Now if you have not received a treasure bag yet, you should very soon. I have finally finished up all the orders. It usually takes me a full week to get them all out, and I go by the order in which I received them. So even though you may have ordered it on Sunday, you may have been the 300th person to order on Sunday, so it may take a little bit longer for you to get your bag. And my last little bit is out. They were just picked up today, so it should be scanned in tomorrow, and you should be receiving them very soon. That being said, this is what we're going to make. If you do not have the Autumn Tones treasure bag or not getting one, then you can just follow along, use whatever's in your stash that's similar, or just follow along for inspiration and get some ideas. Either way, this is still does not exclude you. This is the necklace and bracelet and earrings we're making. Let's get close to the necklace so you can see how pretty it is. It just turned out really, really, really pretty. I just really like it. And then the earrings, they're just really pretty too. Of course, these are pretty dramatic. I made them very long. You can shorten your chain and make them shorter if you don't want them quite that long, or you can make them longer if you want them really dramatic. This is the bracelet. Now, I have one on, so you can see what it looks like on. And that's what that looks like. And of course, I will discuss with you how to adjust the length and everything for that too. But the set, I think, just turned out really pretty. It just looks really nice together. It looks really nice on the neck. And this is what we're going to make. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay. So I'm going to show you what we're going to be using to make this set. First, we're going to do a fairly simple stringing project for the necklace. I tried all kinds of different fancier ways, and this just turned out the prettiest. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to use some beadalon, or excuse me, you can use beadalon or soft flex. I'm using soft flex medium. You can also use beadalon 49, and as you can see, this is 0.018 inch or 0.46 millimeter, and soft flex medium is 0.48 millimeter and 0.019 inch. So they're very similar in size. So either one of these will work. You're going to cut one 12-inch piece for the necklace, and you're going to cut two 10-inch pieces for the bracelet. Just set those aside, and then we are going to be using from the Autumn Tones treasure bag. And of course, if you do not have the treasure bag, you can still do this project. Just dig in your stash, find something similar, draw some inspiration from it, and make something pretty. So what we're going to be using are the twisted teardrop beads that came in the treasure bag. We're going to use all 12 of those. We're going to use 4 cone beads. These came in the treasure bag. There was 5 of them. We're going to use the other one for something else, so we're going to use 4 of them. We are going to use the large pendant that came into the treasure bag also, or in the treasure bag. It is a tube with a pinch bail onto this nice long sandy brown piece of crystal. So we're going to use that. We're going to use some of the 4mm round imitation pyrite beads. These are non-magnetic imitation pyrite, 4mm round beads, and they came in your treasure bag. We'll be using some of those. It's a nice long strand, so you'll have plenty for all 3 projects we're doing. Then we're going to add to the treasure bag some 8/0 seed beads and some 11/0 for the bracelet. For the necklace, just 8/0. I am using Toho Antique Bronze in both 8/0 and 11/0. You can also use Starlight. The gold color looks really pretty. It brings out the tones in the Antique Bronze. Works really well. A regular bronze color, metallic bronze, the permanent finish bronze, all of that will work. So whatever you have on hand that will match nicely with your components. Then we're going to use one of the toggle clasps that came in the treasure bag. We're also going to add to the treasure bag for the bracelet. I'm using a lobster claw clasp and 2 jump rings. I'm using about a 4mm jump ring and an 8mm jump ring in a heavy gauge so that they will stay nice and tight for me and not be a weak point in my bracelet. I will also be adding to the treasure bag 2 head pins in the antique bronze color, 2 ear wires in the antique bronze color, and 6 of these crimp tube covers in the antique bronze color. These are small. The medium size will work probably even a little better, so either small or medium. And then I'm using from the treasure bag some of the chain. We will not be using all this, but that's how much came in the bag, so it's out. And you are going to need some crimp tubes. So what I am using are Beadle-On. I'm using a size 1 and a size 2. If you do not have both, just use size 2. It'll work fine. It's just, I kind of like the size 1 for the technique I'm going to use. And then the size 2 for crimping everything else. So these are Beadle-On. They are actually the antique copper color. I did not have an antique bronze, so I am using crimp tube covers with them, but these at least will blend in somewhat. So that's what I am using. And I think that's everything. So let's go ahead and get started on the necklace. Okay, to start this project, you will want your 12-inch piece of wire that we cut, and you're going to pick up 9 8/0 seed beads onto your piece of wire. Now, if you're using something other than Toho, you may need 10 beads. Toho are generally a little bit bigger than all the other types. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. And I'm just going to drop these down to the center of my piece. Then I'm going to pick up my tube on my pendant here, and I'm going to drop this down over these seed beads. Just kind of center them, center your wire the best you can. It's going to move around, but we're just going to center it somewhat. And this is what you should have so far. Let me get you in the camera a little bit better here. And this is what you should have. Now, we are going to pick up on either side a 4mm round of our imitation pyrite beads here. And we're going to put those on either side. Then we're going to use 2 of our twisted teardrops. Now, these, I'm thinking because they're teardrops, one side should be more narrow than the other. And sometimes I think I've got the more narrow side, and sometimes I think I'm full of it. And maybe they're just not that narrow on one side or the other. I don't know. But I'm going to try to put the narrow side towards the 4mm round beads here. And like I said, sometimes I think I got it, and sometimes I don't know if they're actually teardrop shape. I don't know. Anyway, that's centered on there now, so I've got one on either side. And then I am going to grab 3 of my pyrite beads. And put them on either side. Come here, you. There we go. So if you just have your beads right in front of you, you can just pick up either side and not really mess with your centering too much. Though if it moves around, you can always recenter it. But I kind of like to just lay it down on my desk, and this way I can keep it centered pretty much. Okay, then I'm going to grab one of my tube beads, and I'm just going to slide it down on either side. Like that. And then I'm going to grab a twisted bead, and again I'm going to try to put the narrow end down, but it doesn't really matter. Just kind of make them look the best you can together. Like this. Now, this is going to look like it's not going to stay, and that's okay because we're going to fix that. Then, right now, we're going to center this, and we are going to stabilize this with some crimp tubes, or crimp beads, actually. So I'm going to kind of try to keep this side together by putting on a little clamp here. Of course, it's not going to stay perfect, and that's okay. Get it as centered as you can. Once we get this side stabilized, over here, we can use that to stabilize the other side. So get it as centered as you can, and then pick up a size 1, or if you have a size 2, you can just slide it on and do it too, a crimp 2, but I'm going to get a size 1 crimp bead, and I'm going to slide it onto my piece here, and I am going to stabilize it as close to the bead as I can here, just like this. And without pulling real hard, because like I said, you can stabilize the other side better once you get this one taken care of. So don't push real hard, but grab a pair of flat nose pliers. Make sure that crimp tube is up against that bead the best you can, and then just squeeze that bead down. Now, we can do the other side and make everything nice and tight. We want to hold this together is what we're doing. So that's why we're putting this little crimp tube on here, or this little crimp bead. And once we have stabilized that and made sure our beads are looking the way we want, we can slide a crimp tube over this and cover that crimp bead. So I'm going to grab another of my size 1, and I am going to slide it on to this side. And then I am just going to make sure this time I can push down. Put your bead inside that tube the best you can so that it looks like it's inside there. Make sure both sides look pretty much embedded in there. And then grab your flat nose pliers, push on that bead down towards the bead, the big bead. So push on the crimp bead down as against the big bead, and then squeeze. Now, if I back off for you, you can see this portion of my necklace is stabilized. I have movement here in the middle so that my pendant flows nicely, and everything matches nice. These two beads look nice inside here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up another crimp, or another tube bead, and I am going to, or another cone bead, excuse me, and I'm going to slide it on to this side. Now this is pretty much stabilized, so we'll just work on one side here. And I'm going to pick up 3 of my beads here, my 4mm round beads. At this point, or previous to this point, you can cut 2 pieces of chain that are the same length depending upon the size necklace that you want. Now, I am going to cut about 6 inches of chain. That will make me about a 20-inch necklace. So actually I'm going to cut about 5 inches of chain for either side. So I'm just going to measure out my chain. I'm going to cut 2 exactly the same size pieces, and then I will be back and we will finish this side, and then we'll finish this side. Okay, so I have cut 2 identical pieces of chain, 5 inches long. And this is how you're going to determine the length of your necklace. So if you lay it on your beadboard, center this on the 0 on the outside divot, you can look and see exactly how many inches you're going to need to make whatever length you want. Now, generally speaking, if you're using the same things I am, then you can use about 5 inches for around a 19 and a half maybe even 20-inch necklace. It depends on how much length we get in our clasping. Or you can make it even longer with a 6-inch piece, shorter, of course, whatever length you want to cut. We'll look at the length this ends up to be so you have a nice guide, and that will help. So now we're going to crimp this side and connect the chain at the same time. So I'm going to use my size 2 tube this time. So I'm going to get out a crimp tube. And I'm going to drop it down onto my beadwork here, just like this. And then I'm going to take the end of my chain. Make sure your chain is closed tightly. It should be fine if you didn't open it. If you just cut a piece, it should be fine, but make sure that your chain is closed tightly, your link, and then just drop it onto your beading wire. And then go back into your crimp tube, and we're going to go all the way through these 3 beads underneath the crimp tube. Takes a little bit of time, so just slide that down, go into your cone bead, and just keep pushing it in there. That's why we want a little bit longer piece. This is just so that we can hide our crimp tube and align everything very nicely. So here's my little piece of wire here. I'm going to drag that down. Now, the way I'm going to tighten this up is I'm going to find the side of my wire that's stable. So this side of my loop that's coming through the crimp tube doesn't move. This side does. I'm going to hold on to the side that doesn't move. Or let's see, which side do I have? Okay, so just determine which side moves and which side doesn't. Hold on to the side that doesn't. Come on, quit being weird. And just draw this down. You can readjust your loop on top, but we want to draw this down tightly. Okay, that is my stable side, so now I need my, there we go. So what I'm doing is I'm just working with the bead wire, pulling this down so that this is nice and tight. And then I have a little bit of my beadalon, or my soft flex, sticking out here. And drawing this down, I've drawn it down very tightly here. So you can see. And we'll do the other side too and see if it goes a little bit more smoothly. It works really well when I'm not on camera. But you know, the minute I get on camera, you know what happens. It always does. So now I'm going to take my flush cutters, and I'm going to grab this little wire, and I'm going to cut it as close to that cone bead as I can. Then to draw this back up, I'm just going to pull on my chain a little bit. Hold on to your crimp tube, pull on your chain a little bit, just gently, until you draw that little piece of wire that's sticking out up into the cone bead, and you make your loop here around your wire just a little bit bigger. So you've drawn it down tight, and then you've pulled it out a little bit to hide that wire here. And then we're going to grab our crimping tool, and in the second divot, the one closest to the handle here, I'm going to place this. You can see my 2 wires are going in like this, so they're parallel next to each other. I'm going to grab that crimp tube close to the bead, and I am just going to crimp that down. So I just rested on this bead with my crimp tool. Now I have the first half of my crimp. Now I'm going to place it in the first divot here sideways. So I have a little divot in the middle of my crimp tube. I'm going to put my crimp tool on there sideways so that that divot is in the middle, and the 2 tubes that are formed on either side are touching my crimp tool. And now I'm going to squeeze. And now I have a really nice crimp, just like that. Now, you don't have to, but because it is a copper color, I'm going to grab one of these little covers here, trim tube cover. I'm just going to very gently open it just a little because I'm using small ones. I'm going to open it just slightly. If you force it too much, I just put the tip of my pliers in there and just opened them a little bit, forcing that open. If you do it too much, you're going to break it right in half. So don't do that. And then lay that down on the bead mat and push your crimp tube into it. I find it's just a little bit easier to get your cover on the crimp tube. And like I said, these are a little small for this project, but I'm going to use it anyway. Once I have it on there, I'm going to turn it so that the opening is away from me, and then turn it back towards me. I'm going to grab my crimping tool, and I'm just in the first divot, the round divot, I'm just going to squeeze this shut like that, and then I'm going to put it back in this round divot, the one closest to the tip of the plier, and I'm just going to work this into a circle, closing it and shaping it until it looks halfway decent. These, for me, especially since it's a little small, they're never perfect, but I work them until I get them looking the way I like. And I'm just using a series of gentle squeezes with my crimp tool just to get it on there the best I can. And that's what that looks like. Now, I have this very tight, so I am using soft flex so that I can kind of make it more flexible. So I can kind of work that beading wire just a little bit and get a little bit of flexibility in this side. Because you want to keep it very tight, but then your beads kind of bunch. So you just kind of work that flexibility in that wire a little bit. Now we're going to go to this side and we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to pick up a tube bead here, a cone bead. I cannot get the names of these right today. So we're going to pick up the cone bead, then we're going to pick up 3 of our beads here. See if I can do this crimping a little bit smoother for you, because it's really not hard. So we want to do that, and then we want to grab one of our size 2 crimp tubes and drop it on the wire here. And then we're going to grab the chain. Make sure that that link that you're going to connect to is closed tightly, and just drop it on the wire. Come here, you. Just like that. And now, let me get you really close. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to go back through this crimp tube. I'm going around the chain, back into this crimp tube, and then I'm going to feed through all 3 of these beads here. And then I'm going to feed it through this cone bead. And I'm just going to keep going until I see it come out of the cone bead right there. I'm going to grab a hold of it just so I can see it a little bit better. But as you can see, everything's far away from the beads here. So I need to push this all down so I know where I need to be. Grab this wire. And you can just pull until you get it nice and close. Then you're going to establish which side of this moves. So this side moves. So it's the side that's going down into all the beads. So we want to hold on to the other side And we want to draw this down tight. That's going to hold all the beads together really tightly. When you get it to where it's pretty close, you can let go of that side, and then you can just continue to pull all the way until it's very small little loop around your chain. And everything is nice and tight. If you don't get it the first time, then just scoot up your crimp tube a little bit, push everything together, and then pull it again. So I'll grab my pliers. I'm going to move this all down just a little bit more, and I'll grab my pliers, hold on to this side, and then pull this. And I've got it drawn together pretty well. So I'm just going to tighten that down around my chain. You can use your pliers. There. You want to just make sure that the tip of it, this is whiter on this end, so it doesn't go up into it. You just want it to be laying in there nicely so that it doesn't look like it's separate from the cone bead, because if it is, it's going to look funny on your neck. It's not going to hang right. It's not going to look right. It's just going to look like it's just suspended there, and you don't want that. So you just mess with it until you get it real tight here, and then I'm going to put it even tighter. And then you can cut your wire. So we're going to get really close to the end of the cone bead. Get as close as you can and cut this wire. And then where it's sticking out just a little bit, then you're just going to pull on your chain just a tiny bit and draw that little piece up into the cone bead. Now you can't see it at all, see? And then we're going to grab our crimping tool, and we're going to place and turn it to where I can see that my wires are going in parallel to each other. I'm going to place my crimping tool on that and balance it on the bead below the crimp tube, and then squeeze. And now I have the first portion of my crimp. And you can see both wires are encased in little tubes. Now I'm going to use the first divot, this one here. When you close it, it makes a circle. And I'm going to place it sideways on this crimp tube so that the two tubes on either side of that little V-fold are touching my crimping tool, and I'm going to squeeze. And now I have a really nice crimp. So it's always a little bit of a struggle to make sure that you have everything held together. On a necklace designed like this, things need to be together tightly, so you need to make sure when you're crimping that you're controlling that wire inside. The reason I brought it all the way down is so that I could control it, and then I can also control the size of my loop on either side of my chain, because I don't want it to be real big and real showy, because it's not the same color as the rest of the necklace. So that's why I did it that way. And hopefully if you don't get it right away, just try it a couple of times until you do. Just take your crimp tube off. If you're not drawing it well, push it up and try it again. Push it up again and try it again until you get it. Just don't crimp it until you get it in the place you want it to be. Then I'm going to go ahead and put on my crimp tube cover on this side, and then I'm going to grab my clasping, and I'll just open the ends and put it on. But I'll go ahead and put this one on off camera. You're going to do it exactly the way I just showed you, and then we'll come back and put our clasping on. Okay, so I have put my crimp tube cover on, and now I am going to put my clasp on. And you can use little jump rings if you'd like to connect it, but I am just going to open up one of the links. So I'm going to find where it opens on the top here and just twist the link in my chain open like this. And then, show you, so I just twisted it, don't pull it open, and then I'm just going to put it onto my clasp, and then I'm going to twist that link shut again. Make sure it has decent movement, and it does, so that works out fine. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side, and then we'll look at the necklace and see what it looks like. So I'm just going to grab my last link, find where it opens, place my pliers on either side, twist it open, drop on the clasp. This one's a little wider, so I'm going to have to open this a little bigger. And then close it. Make sure you close it nice and tightly. And now I have my end of my necklace. Let me get the necklace out here and show you what we've got. So this turns out really pretty and just absolutely gorgeous. And I designed a few other things, and this is, every time I laid this out, this just worked the best. So it's a fairly simple design. Just master your crimping a little bit, and the more you learn different ways to crimp, the more things you can do with stringing. So this is my original design, and this is the one I just now made. They both turned out the same, so I know that it's a working design. If they both worked out fine, I like to then just play with my beads a little bit and get a little bit of flexibility into that beading wire. And that's what that looks like. They are just really, really, really pretty. So now we are going to make a bracelet. Okay, for the bracelet, you're going to grab one of your pieces of 10 inches of beading wire that you cut. So this is my medium soft flex, and I'm going to pick up a 4mm round bead, and I'm going to put it on and just let it fall to the center. And then I'm going to pick up an 11/0 on either side of that 4mm round and let them fall to the center also, just like that. Then I am going to grab one of my teardrops, and again try to figure out which way I want to put it on, because like I said, it seems like one end is more narrow than the other, but then when it turns it's not, so you know. And then I'm going to put this one on this side and just look at them and see if they look like they're positioned about the same way. Some of these are a little bigger than others, so you might want to make sure that you get two that match really well. And then, let's see. Yeah, I guess that's okay. And then I am going to pick up on either side of this, I'm going to pick up an 11/0 and then an 11/0. And then I'm going to pick up 3 4mm rounds on either side. So let me get these over here. And drop it down. And then 3 more on this side. And then an 11/0, or actually 2 11/0s on both sides. Pick up 2, and then I'll pick up 2 more. And now I'm going to center it by putting the 2 ends together. And let me get you in a little closer. I just wanted you to be able to see. I mean, stringing, you don't have to get that close, but just put them together like this. And then grab one of your twisted teardrops and put both strands through it, or both wires through it. Draw it down and just kind of center it the best you can by pulling on the wires until you get them pretty well centered. I have one that's quite a bit longer than the other, so let me move that down and pull this back up, pull that back up, and it's still too long. So I'm just going to mess with it until I get them somewhat even. Start down here. There we go. Okay, so now this is what I have. Now I am going to start putting on, I think I'm going to put 7 4mm rounds on both strands. So hold your wires together and these should slide right over both strands. As I say that, it argues with me. There we go. So I'm just going to go ahead and put 7 of these on so you don't have to watch me. Let me get you in close to see what I have so far. And I'm just going to slide 7 4mm rounds over both of these wires and we'll be back. Okay, so this is what I have. Make sure you take your beads, push them down so everything's tight, everything's held together and looks pretty. You don't want any slack in any of this. You're going to see a tiny bit of wire here and there where your 11/0s are, but you shouldn't see a lot, just a tiny, tiny bit. You're going to see more on mine because it's magnified under the camera lens. So that's how we want that to look, just as tight as we can get that. And then we are going to grab, and this is also where you're going to adjust your length. My original, I did 8 beads here. So, and it's just a tiny bit long, so I'm going to try 7. And if it's too short, I can always add a few jump rings to make an extender. But I'm going for about a 7-inch. This is about a 7.5. And I want it to lay rather tightly around my wrist so that it doesn't flip. So not tight, but not real loose either. Because anytime you have something that's bold in the front, it kind of turns. So I'm going to go a little bit shorter and see how that works out. Now, I'm going to get a size 2 crimp tube. And I'm going to put it on both of these wires here. And just drag it down to that top bead like this. And then I'm going to separate my wires just slightly so that I get a nice crimp. Just a little bit like this. And then I'm going to grab my crimping tool, and in the second divot, the one closest to the handle, I'm going to place it onto that crimp tube. Push down on that bead just a little bit to keep everything tight, and then I am going to crimp. So let me get you in closer and you can see I have a nice little crimp. Now in the first divot on the end of my crimping tool here, I'm going to place this crimp tube in sideways so the 2 little tubes that I formed are together, or touching the crimp tool, and I'm going to squeeze. And this is what I have. Make sure you have a nice crimp. And if one of your wires is a little longer than the other, then preserve that wire and take the other wire and cut it as close as you can to this crimp tube. So get in there really close, pull on it, and cut this down. Just like that. Now I'm going to put a crimp cover over this crimp tube. So I'm just going to pick one up, slide it on there, and then with my crimping tool, I'm going to close it as neatly as I can. And I'm just gently squeezing it several times till I get the shape I want. And if I had a little bit bigger one, it would look a little better because you can see a tiny bit of my crimp tube under there. But again, it's magnified in the camera, so it's really not that bad. That's what we have. Now we are going to pick up another bead and drop it onto the piece here. Then we are going to go through the clasp. Excuse me. Then you're going to pick up another crimp tube first. So pick up a bead, pick up a crimp tube, and then pick up your clasp. Sorry about that. Put your clasp on. Then bring your wire into the crimp tube and into the bead. And again, grab the stable side and on your loop and pull the moving side. And when you get it close enough, you can pull it down some more. Make sure you have some movement in your loop here that's big enough to move. And then grab your crimping tool. In the second divot, place that tool right onto the top of the bead and squeeze. Just like that. Then turn it sideways and squeeze again. And that's what you should have. Now I'm going to take my flush cutter and get as close as I can to this and cut it. And then I'll just grab another one of my covers here. Okay, I'd have to drop that on the floor. Or actually, when they're stuck together, I throw them on the floor and then they come apart. But I'm not going to do that on camera. So let me find one that's not stuck together. There's one. And I will open it just slightly. I put my tips in and just force it open by opening my plier handles just a little bit, like this. Sorry about that. I don't even know how long I've been out of frame. Sorry. Like this. And then I'm just going to slide that on there. Do that again. Okay, so this one wants to argue with me. So I may do this off camera just so that you don't have to watch me struggle. Oh, there it goes. Okay, I've got it. And again, I'm just going to gently squeeze this together. And form it the best I can. And then I'm going to give my bracelet some flexibility with that soft flex. This is why the soft flex or the bead-along that I showed you will work best for these designs, so that you can get a little bit of flexibility in it. If you're using tiger tail or something like that, it's just going to kink. But with soft flex, you can manipulate your beads around a little bit, have them tight together, and still get some flexibility. So this is one half of my bracelet now. Now I am going to grab my second piece of wire and I'm going to slide it up through this 4mm round bead here. So I'm just going to go into this bead, slide it through, and center it. So I grab the two ends, put them together, and then pull on this until I get it down to the center. Just like this. And now I'm going to pick up an 11-0 on either side. And then I am going to pick up my twisted teardrop beads here. See if I can put it on here so they look halfway decent. They look about the same. They seem to. Okay. And then we're just going to do the same thing we did before, an 11-0 on either side of them. Like this. And then we are going to just copy this here. So you're going to need 3 of your 4mm round beads onto either side now. And then 3 on this side. Two 11-0s on either side. And then put your 2 ends together. Center it the best you can. And then you're going to grab one of your teardrops and slide it on both strands, or both wires, I should say. And get these on the end here as close as you can. And then once it looks halfway decent, tighten it up as much as you can so it looks like this. And then we are going to pick up our 4mm rounds. Now I found actually with my other one, if I have one a little bit longer than the other, it's actually a little bit easier to slide on. So I just left one a little bit longer than the other, and I can slide my 4mm round beads over it a little bit better than trying to get both of them that are flush cut together down. So go ahead and put on your 7 beads and then crimp it, cut off the end, and put on your jump ring on the other end. So, yes, I forgot a jump ring on this side. You could actually have put a jump ring on this side, but I'm just going to put a large jump ring on this side, and hopefully I have enough movement here. You can, however, in my first one, you can just put a jump ring on and then put on your clasping with the jump ring. Either way. So this is how I have, so I may end up with a little bit shorter length, but this works also. Now go ahead and put on this end exactly the same way we did this by connecting your large jump ring. Make sure that your jump ring is shut very tightly, closed very tightly, and we'll be back to see the finished product. Okay, so I have went ahead and put on my 7 beads and my crimp tube, and then put my crimp tube cover over it, cut off my other wire, and I put on my next bead, my crimp tube, and I've decided to put a small heavy jump ring with a big jump ring to get back my length and also to give it a little bit more movement on this side. Like I said, on the other side you could put a small jump ring on the clasp and then go through this small jump ring. So I'm just going to put this through, and then I'm going to go through, see if it quits arguing with me, the jump ring, or excuse me, the crimp tube and the bead here. I'm going to hold on to the stable side of the wire, grab a hold of this wire here, pull it down, make sure there's a little bit of movement there, no slack at all, like this, and then I am going to crimp again. So I'm just going to grab my crimping tool and place it up tight against that bead, and then right on top of the crimp tube and squeeze. And I have a nice crimp here, a nice beginning of my crimp. Then I'm going to place it in sideways. Of course, my jump rings want to get in my way. And I'm going to squeeze again, just like I've been showing you all along. Now I have a nice tight crimp. I'm going to grab my flush cutters. I'm going to get as close as I can. Place them right up against that bead, pull on this wire, and cut. And then I'm going to give myself a little bit of flexibility by stretching that soft flex in there, just by moving it around a little bit, because this is awfully stiff if you don't do that. And then I'm going to put a crimp tube cover on this one, just like I showed you on this side. And see, this is pretty tight over here, so I'm going to give it a little bit more flexibility too. And I'm going to go ahead and put the crimp tube cover on and come back and show you a pretty bracelet. Okay, so this is what it looks like. I'll show you. I finished the crimping, the crimp tube cover here. That's what my clasping looks like. This is exactly a 7-inch bracelet, exactly. And my wrist is about 6.5, 6 3/4 of an inch. So, or inches, not of an inch. And this 7-inch works really nicely to hold this centerpiece on the top of my hand pretty nicely. You don't want it to be really huge. Of course, you don't want it tight either. I still have lots of movement, but I don't want it really big, because all it's going to do is fall down under my wrist like this, if it's like that. So you want to make sure that it's nice and not snug, but, you know, just not real big. So this worked out with the 7 beads to make exactly a 7-inch bracelet. When I put the 8 beads on, I had about an 8-inch bracelet. But I also, well, because I added the jump ring over here, it made the same difference. So you can adjust just by how many beads you put towards the end there. And of course, I'm not going to get that off that way. But that's what that looks like. And we are going to move into doing the earrings real quick. These are what our earrings are going to look like. I'm going to show you how to make those, and then I'll show you the entire set all together. For the earrings, I have cut 2 pieces of chain 8 links long each. So, of course, if you want it to be more dramatic, you can make these longer. If you want it to be a little shorter, then you can make these shorter. They turn out to be fairly long this way. So let's go ahead and make one of these so you can see what it looks like. To make it, or you can see how to make it, or something like that. I don't know what I'm talking about. Don't listen to me. Okay, so we're going to pick up a 4mm round. Then we're going to pick up one of our twisted teardrops. And then we're going to pick up another 4mm round on a head pin, just like this. And then we're going to grab some flat nose pliers, and just a little bit above this bead on the very top here, just a tiny bit above, I am going to bend this straight over, just like this. Then I'm going to put this over my finger like an L, and then I am going to cut about 3/4 of an inch here. Or let's say, yeah, about 3/4 of an inch. These little cutters are not really doing their job today. There we go. And now that I've cut that, I am going to place my round nose pliers while I'm still holding it and balancing it over my finger. I'm going to place it just a little ways down so that I get a decent sized loop, but not a huge one. And I'm placing it right at the end of the wire, and then I'm going to start to roll until I can't roll anymore, and then I'm going to bring my hand forward a little bit, reposition my plier, and continue to roll. I'm going to take it out of the loop and then place the front of my plier in the loop and close and finish my loop, just like this. And then I'm going to straighten this up a little bit. Then I'm going to grab a piece of chain, and just because sometimes when you try to open the loop itself, it loosens up your beads and it's just kind of a pain, I'm going to open up the chain and slide it on the loop there. So I'm going to find where my chain opens here. Just a second. My eyes are not the best anymore, so I have to figure out where that's at. There we go. So I'm placing my flat nose here, and then I'm going to get another pair of pliers. My opening is right there, I hope. And I'm just going to turn this, just like this, and slide it on here. And then close it. Make sure it's closed nice and tightly. And then I'm just going to grab an ear wire, and I'm going to open the loop on the ear wire. Just find where it opens and lift it up, just like this. Then I'm going to slide on my chain, and close the ear wire. Just by bringing it back the way I opened it. And I have an earring. It's like that. I'm going to make the other one off camera and come back and show you exactly what we have as far as the set goes. And here, my friends, is the complete set. So I finished the earrings, and this is what it looks like all together. Now, this necklace turned out to be right around 19 inches long with the size clasp I used, because this is such a big clasp, it added some length to it. I wanted it to be around 18 inches, so this lays up higher. My original design that I made is 22 inches long, so this hangs more in the middle of the chest. However, when it's higher up, it spreads out a little bit nicer and hangs a little bit prettier when it's higher up on the neck. But like I said, you can make it any length you want just by adjusting your chain that you put on it. So that works fine. Here is the bracelet I made with you on camera today because I can't take it off. Oh, I could. I just had another one. This is my original design. So this one is about, let me measure it. I think it's right at 7.5 inches long. And like I said, normally I give myself an inch play in my bracelets. I make them a little over 7 to 7.5 inches because my wrist is a little over 6.5 inches. However, the 7-inch worked really well. And this one's just a little bit big. So you just adjust that by adding or subtracting beads in this portion of your bracelet. But this turned out really pretty too. And it sets up real pretty. Let me put it on. Let's see. It sets up real nice like this. So that looks pretty. So anyway, that is the set that we've made today, and more tutorials will be coming at you. So I really hope you stay tuned, and I hope you liked this one. See you later. Bye-bye.